Okay, this lesson for the Cornet Project class, I would like to go back to, years ago when we were first working on controversial texts, 1 Thessalonians 4:17. How was it that we had the return, the resurrection, the rapture all occurring simultaneously, even having the adverb simultaneously in the text and then the preposition together with. So we'll look at that and notice because it seems to be some solutions are, well, there's the return. Don't confuse that with the rapture, instead of noticing that it might be both. So I looked at the Grace New Testament commentary and was reading through it. And if you're young enough to still be able to read, get a hard copy or use the ebook as I had done. So I went to this text, and he had mentioned there is the fear that those believers who die before the rapture will not be resurrected until much later, that is, until after the millennium. Paul directly contradicts that fear. He said, the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet of God. These are prophesied eschatological signs that attend the return of Messiah. This could refer to the rapture or the second coming or both. He then said a remarkable, refreshing statement. Most naturally, it refers to both, for the fact that we will meet the Lord in the air, not in heaven, suggests that Jesus' second coming takes 7 years to complete. The rapture and second coming are two phases of his return. The dead in Christ will rise first, that is, immediately before we who are alive. And it says the word called up harpazo, and he goes on and explains it. It's excellent. I mean, he crushes it on that solution is exactly, it matches the text, which was our concern in this class, is how do we use our text and then not have contradictions, because so many people, I've had people come our way over the decades and say, well, you need to know the difference between the rapture and the return, and when one text is referring to one and not the other. And you remember Matthew 24, he said, after the tribulation of those particular days, it's actually in association with. Then he spoke of all these signs, eschatological signs that would break in. So let's go to our text for just a minute and see if we can see this at Peta. So then, now those of you that aren't here for the lesson, language lesson, you just scroll ahead, or you've heard all you want. Then we ourselves, hoi, zontes, the living ones, and then it's the ones, and then it's lape, omenoi. There we go. So the ones remaining around, Okay, so then we ourselves, the living ones, the ones remaining around, it's from harpazo, gaze, omatha. Future passive, will be seized away. And then here's the part, and this is where I'll stop, but it was hama, simultaneously, and then seen together with altois, them. So Dr. Robert N. Wilkin couldn't have said it better, and it certainly relieved all of my angst. Now, for some of the math, you remember we have rationale for the 70th week. We got March 14th, 445 BC till the AD 32, April 6th. That was the 173,880 days. That was at 360 years 360-day years, 360-day years. And so that'd be 483 of those. So we have that week wanting to get us to the 490. So we have 7 years out there. So, and we then have the term meta in Matthew 24, the term meta, which is in association with. So that places us here in this bracket or window, if you will, where you have 3.5 years, 1,260 days, 1,260 days, 3.5 years. And of course, he does some very critical studies on the extra days plus 30, all the way up to plus 75 at the out here beyond that. And then he speaks of even some time here, perhaps approximately 30 days prior to that the Lord would receive us. But what he does is relocate us. So we can be relocated to the place. So we go to this place, which he said, I go to prepare a place for you. Of course, New City would be the perfect accommodation, and then it ultimately appears so everyone can see it. So he would return, and the dead would rise first, dead first, then the living simultaneously. Together with them. There we go. So we would, as he's returning, we're rising. So we're there. This all takes place. But you remember, if we lived 100 years, it would only be 2.4 hours to God. So for him, 7 years, what's that? Approximately 10 minutes. So phases is an excellent way of explaining it, but to realize time in reference to God in relationship to all that he'll be doing and what he can do, that's just 10 minutes for him. And yet that solves everything when we can now attend to the text, don't have to contradict it. We don't have to start breaking it apart, saying, as I was trained as a child, we could be gone any time, and that would trigger the Great Tribulation. And yet we see horrible things happening, and we're still here, and we're not holding back as much as we'd like to have thought, because things today would be unconscionable in the 70s if you'd have ever said we had a Y2K or a New World Order 1991 announced by our president, George Bush, or global war on terror, global pandemics, all the things that we're experiencing. And then the social re-engineering or reimagineering, if you will, and the complete civil unrest and the partisanship. There is no domestic tranquility, no moral consensus any longer, complete ultimate defiance and rebellion against the grace of God. So we were trained that none of this would happen until we were out of here, and then that would trigger it all. But that doesn't seem to be the case at all, and this seems to be very sound. It's just I couldn't help but stop and notice that that's the first time I found anyone who described it so well, and it matched the text so perfectly. So you have a blessed day and enjoy this lesson.